Mike, I think I'm the most worried about this episode. And this is specifically from my perspective, not your perspective, because the person we're
Okay.
going to talk about, the legend of this human being and who maybe we want to believe he was, is older than he existed on this earth. He's been gone for now, what, almost 29 years, right?
Almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, 30 years. You're right. 30 years, almost 30 years. Oh my gosh. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
seriously. Yeah.
And so since this person's passed away and this person we're talking about is Tupac Shakur, the story about who he was and the things that he was going to do in his life and whether he was going to stay in music or go to acting or he's going to bring the East Coast and West Coast back together like this, this puzzle. Like I think a lot of it was hopeful and wishful thinking. And so for me to have to sit here and go, hey, this man was a young man when he passed away. He had young man ideas. He made some terrible mistakes, some not so terrible mistakes in hindsight, some young person mistakes. And just the idea that in in his passing, he has kind of become bigger than almost human in a sense to some people. So
Oh, yeah.
that's kind of why this is sitting with me in an interesting way. And after reading Jeff Pearlman's book, Only God Can Judge Me, which is, as far as I can tell, as far as the things that I've read, really the only journalism done about him, going all the way back to his childhood, to his relationship with his mom, and so and so. So I am coming off of the heels of reading that, which brings Tupac to a very human level to who he was, to the young person he was, reading about his childhood and how my man wasn't the most popular dude, like, because he's getting pulled out of school constantly and he doesn't really have a wardrobe and teeth are probably not in great shape. Like just things
Sure.
that, that a young person is going through. And then when you think of who Tupac was, oh, this dude had to be the coolest dude on every single block that he was on. But he was just so from a human perspective, I'm really interested to get into this episode with you because we're not here to separate fact from fiction necessarily. Some of the legend of these artists is kind of the fun thing to talk about. But I do think that there are lots of things out there about Tupac that probably more wishful and hopeful than realistic in that sense.
I mean, the legend of Tupac is real. And I think the more time passes between when he was here on Earth and not here on Earth, the bigger the legend grows and the less that legend is based in what really actually happened.
And why does this mean so much to me? Well, and we're going to talk about the year of 1996 right now. I'm, about to turn 20 years old, depending on what time of 96 we're talking about, as were you.
Hmm.
And I am post high school. I am in college. I am working. You'll love this one. Working at Blockbuster Video, which was a haven
R.I.P.
for people like us who were like pop culture heads, and it was a really cool place to work for that perspective because you meet a lot of similar people with similar interests. And yeah, I was just I was a pretty mature kid because only 2.5 years later would I have a child of my own, but I was still pretty mature person at that age. And but to even think about the things that were influencing me back then, to think about that today, they're kind of wild. Thinking of yourself as a younger person. So where were you in 1996? What were you doing? What were you up to?
So 1996, same as you, I would have been 19 going on 20, turned 20 about halfway through the year. Um, at the beginning of 96, I was working at Tower Records in Manhattan. And by mid January of 1996, I was no longer working at Tower Records, was out of work for a couple of months. And in March, got a job at another record store called Nobody Beats the Wiz and was there for the next 7 years until they went out of business. But the longest stretch of unemployment in my adult life was the 2 months in 1996. I started the year living in an apartment in the Bronx, and ended the year living in renting my aunt's basement in Queens. So, a lot of change, going officially into my 20s, living in two different places, working at two different places, just a lot happening in that way.
So, as we look at this time frame, Tupac Shakur himself is freshly on bail. He's out of jail thanks to death row and Interscope. They bail him out. It was like a $1.4 million
$1 million,
bail
but
or
yeah, it
something like
was,
that.
yeah.
And the bailing of him out consisted of, we will bail you out, and you have to sign a 3 album deal with us. And what I'm sure I knew this, but what I didn't realize until reading it was the first album, and the album that we're going to talk about right now, All Eyes on Me, that actually counted as 2. So he was only on the hook for one more
One
album,
more
which was
album,
the Machiavelli album
right?
after this, and then he would have been back to being a free agent. And depending on some of the things that you have read about Tupac, he was either A, frustrated with Suge Knight, or B, like, just gonna be dependent on them because he was not doing very well, even though he was making money. He was getting stretched in 25 different ways. So yeah, again, going back to what the legend versus what the real story of Tupac is. Um, you know
Well, I think one question to immediately ask is like, was he actually making money? Because prior to 1996, like, I mean, first of all, if he was really making money, he could have bailed himself out, and he wouldn't have needed, Death Row and Interscope to put up $1.4 million. He'd released 3 albums up to that point.
Mhm,
Only one of them, only Me Against the World, was like a big seller.
mhm,
His first album ended up going gold like long after it came out. And, his second album, which is the one that really kind of like broke him through to the mainstream, still had only sold about 1 million copies. So, like, I think what a lot of people misinterpret about the record business is that, like, you sell 1 million copies, you're set for life. There's so much money that an artist has to pay off, um, whether it's from videos or, um, paying producers, like the whole 9 yards, particularly in hip hop, which is a very producer dependent medium.
mhm.
Um, like, you're not making tons of cash unless you're selling like Please Hammer Don't Hurt Him kind of money.
And
Um,
which is hilarious because 'cause we're gonna talk about Hammer in a very specific thing when it comes to the year in music 1996, so,
right,
uh, it's hilarious. Um, the the idea of Tupac's image comes into play here. I mentioned Jeff Pearlman's book, Only God Can Judge Me. I interviewed Jeff Pearlman, and we're gonna play the interview. We'll put it in the feed and we'll put it on YouTube as part of our series this week. We'll do our 50 for 50 episode, which is this one. Then we'll do our top 5 episode, and then I'll put it as an episode of the cool check in. So Jeff Pearlman, when I was talking to him, a lot of, again, that book is pure journalism, right? As pure journalism in a hip hop sense as you can get, because of this idea that who are you talking to and where do these stories come from, and a
right,
lot of that. And we talked about that in the interview as well. But just the idea that Tupac takes on this persona of thug life, and whether, like, what it really meant, like, what was it? Was it a stage act? Was it a fake tough guy persona because he knew that it would sell? If you're creating beef with East Coast and West Coast, do you kind of have to play that you're some gangbanger guy? Because Tupac was none of those things
right,
when he was growing up.
right.
And so the age old story is that after he did Juice with Bishop, the character of Bishop,
Mhm.
and the character of Bishop basically becomes mesmerized by this idea that there is power in the gun. And so then, Jeff spent a good amount of time in his book trying to figure out if that was real or bullshit. Like, did Tupac turn Bishop into what he thought was going to be his persona selling music? And he's like, sometimes when you hear these legends, they're just so created and they take off a life of their own. And when you actually dial it down, you're like, okay, this is actually false. But when
Right.
he finished his research, he was like, I think this one is kind of right. And so he saw what Tupac got out of being Bishop. And even Tupac's friends said after the filming of Juice was over, like all of a sudden, Tupac is carrying a weapon and he was not someone who carried a weapon before.
Right.
And so this idea of persona versus who you really are, I think is just going to run crazily through this episode because of who Tupac is. Because you go back and listen to Me Against the World, that dude is a lot more interested in unfairness and in uh you know groups of people who are being um marginal groups who are not being protected and like voicing concerns about society. And then you listen to All Eyes on Me and he really doesn't give a shit about any of that on that album.
Yeah, I mean it's a 180. Tupac's first three records are very conscious. His first album particularly definitely comes from like a Public Enemy kind of place, and then his second album has more like records for the ladies or records about ladies. But if you listen to Pac's first three albums, um, they're very very heavily uh, focused on like Black liberation and storytelling and all that kind of stuff. And then like a couple of songs where he's like, "I love chicks," you know. Um, and then All Eyes on Me, and then his kind of persona post that just does like a complete 180 on what he was before.
There's a great and I couldn't read the whole thing, but there's an old uh I'm not even sure if XXL, the website, exists anymore, but the old magazine that we grew up with, XXL, which was post The Source, there's an oral history on the production of All Eyes on Me.
Mm,
And I couldn't even read all of it because there was like some I don't again, this is why I don't think that website currently exists because it was like a downloadable script format that I couldn't even like really get through the whole thing. It kept refreshing and so it was but I got through a part where and this kind of tells you kind of what you were saying about producers and how those people have to get paid. And also there's just like an incestuous thing about these groups because Suge Knight was like, whatever project we are putting out, I expect all of my producers, who may also be artists, to basically perform like a team. Like this
right,
is not your song. It's kind of which is the best for the label.
right,
And so Daz Dillinger was talking about how um Got My Mind Made Up, which was a kind of a crazy song when you listen to it, compared to what everything else that's on All Eyes on Me, because you got Method Man, you got
good
Redman,
man.
and I think the Dog Pound's on that song or on a version of that song. And so when the story of that album is that it was supposed to be a Dog Pound song, and as Corrupt explained it, Daz was just being lazy and he just didn't like work on it in time or something. And so it's just laying there. And so supposedly Dre has it. And when Tupac hears it, he's like, "Oh, I want that for mine." And Dre's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I put this together, blah, 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 blah." And so Tupac is talking about this, and word gets back to Daz that Dre took credit for the song. And Daz is like, "What does he mean? Like, I'm the one who worked on that." And according to Daz, this is really what caused the beef between Pac and Dre was Dre taking credit for stuff that he didn't do. And the Tupac and Dre feud is Tupac is gone, before this thing really even gets started. But on Machiavelli, he starts dissing Dre a lot on
Right.
that album. But it comes from, according to Dad's, like this story that he tells about Got My Mind Made Up. So like just how this industry works and the business, like you think of like, you know, hip hop labels and like you think of like this like very like strategic and like based output, like it's an operation. And these guys are just like, I got this, and Pac here's he's like, okay, I want that. Let me go write something down, and I'm gonna record it, and we'll immediately put it out. Like that's fascinating to think about. I don't know if it still works like that today, but this is a time when hip hop was selling millions and millions of records, and this is how it worked on All Eyes on Me.
I
All
don't
right.
think the industry works that way anymore.
Okay, so let's go back to 1996. I just got a few nuggets here of things that were happening just to kind of put everybody in the place and time. January 18th, 1996. Lisa Marie Presley files for divorce from Michael Jackson. The two were wed on May 26th, 1994. Lisa Marie, until her passing, she was pretty pro MJ. I don't know if she ever really said anything negative about MJ
She never
publicly.
really did. And actually, if I read a part of her book recently, and even in her last days, the book was partially written by Lisa Marie's daughter, and was like, Mike was cool.
Yeah, her kids also had really nothing negative to say about him.
Right.
All right. Tupac releases first ever rap double album, All Eyes on Me. This is in February. One of the most influential albums. Quickly achieves platinum and reaches #1 on the Billboard 200. So I was talking about working at Blockbuster, and you were working
I was
uh,
in between record stores at the moment. Um,
before All Eyes on Me comes out. I don't know if you were doing database searches of releases or whatever, but Blockbuster Video, for a very small amount of time, I think Blockbuster Music comes out sometime shortly after this. Like they had
okay.
a music side of the business.
Right. Right.
But we were getting albums. I remember getting the Wu-Tang triple album in store like a month before street date.
Huh. Yeah, we didn't get stuff that early. Usually, if records came out on Tuesdays, and we would usually get new releases like the Thursday of the week before, Thursday or Friday, sometimes even Monday. Um, but yeah, it would usually be if something showed up a week before it came out, there's too much risk involved in it. Somebody misreading something and putting it out before it's supposed to come out. So yeah, we usually got stuff like the Thursday or Friday of the week before.
So I remember a colleague of mine doing a search in our inventory system and putting a pre-order copy on Tupac's album that was about to come out, but it was not called All Eyes on Me. Do you know what it was called?
What was it called?
Euthanasia.
Ah, okay.
That's what it was in the system before it came out, and it's a trivia nugget. It's not a serious trivia nugget, but it's always stuck with me because for that short period of time where we got music in our store, like we literally have these albums a week, 2 weeks, before. Like, why didn't I just figure out how to get all of them and then burn them all, and then I could have been like before Napster. Man,
You could have been the original Napster,
yeah, could have been. What's that dude's name? Sean. What's his name?
Sean Fanning, or you could
Eh,
have been like bootleg DVD guy on Martin.
yeah, totally. Okay, February 14th, the artist formerly known as Prince marries backup dancer Mayte. Is that how she pronounced?
My te.
Maite Garcia, who was 15 years younger. And did they get married because she was pregnant?
No, they got married. I think they got married, and then she got pregnant.
But then
Um,
the baby didn't
and then
survive, right?
the baby only lived for a couple of days. But there's a whole thing, and we'll talk about Prince at a later time, where
Mhm.
Prince met her when she was younger, and like put her in his band, and basically, I sadly kind of like groomed her.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything while she was underage, but once she was of age, it's kind of like, okay, you're my girlfriend now. And they ended up getting married and then ultimately getting divorced.
Snoop Dogg and his bodyguard are acquitted of first-degree murder. The jury deadlocks on voluntary manslaughter charges, and a mistrial is declared. Murder was the case that they gave him.
And had that jury not deadlocked and it resulted in mistrial, who knows where, where the legend of Snoop or what the legend of Snoop would be 30 years later.
He's probably not hosting the Olympics.
He's probably not hosting the Olympics.
February 22nd, MCA Records buys half of Interscope Records. Time Warner had owned half of Interscope until September 95 when it sold off its share due to political pressure over the label's gangster rap artists' explicit lyrics. Were you following the business this closely back then?
I remember Interscope being distributed by Warner and then not being distributed by Warner and being distributed by Universal. That much I remember. I remember there being, I mean, obviously there was a huge sort of blowback about hip hop lyrics, particularly gangster rap lyrics, whether it was NWA or Ice T or Ice Cube, eventually Tupac and a lot of the death row stuff. From C. Dolores Tucker and Dionne Warwick and a lot of, sort of older black people, even Bill Cosby. But, I knew enough about the business to kind of at least have some kind of eye on that back then, even though I'm I certainly was not as well versed in business as I am now.
I remember Bill Cosby wanting people to pull their pants up.
Pull their pants up while he was pulling other people's pants down.
Oh, man. We could do the content that we could do on our love of the Cosby Show.
Cosby Show
was destroyed, just absolutely destroyed.
I mean, you know what? I still think it's worth us doing like an episode on the Cosby Show or maybe on TV in general. Just because, I mean, sure, the show has his name on it, but there's so much we could talk about that show that doesn't even involve him. Particularly after Malcolm passed. Like, I feel like there's probably some good content in there.
February 20th.
We could talk about how fine Lisa Bonet was for an hour. Like
the line from Martin where said I think something about Cole's like, do you know any French? And Cole's like, Lisa Bonet. By the way, have you ever seen a daughter look as much like her mom as Zoe looks like Lisa?
It's crazy.
It's like
but that's also what happens when like both your parents look alike.
Yeah, true. And both your parents are just crazy
ridiculously attractive human beings. It's insane.
February 28th, the 38th annual Grammy Awards, hosted by, if I would have asked myself who hosted in this time frame, if I'd have given myself 10 picks, I don't think I would have got it.
Let me
Ellen DeGeneres.
Oh, damn.
Would you have guessed Ellen DeGeneres?
No, it would have been like a similar comedian. It'd been like Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah. Alanis Morissette wins 4 awards, including Album of the Year for Jagged Little Pill, while Seal's Kiss from a Rose wins both record and song. Hootie and the Blowfish wins Best New Artist.
Presented by Tupac.
The ceremony also notably features the reunion of the original lineup of Kiss, introduced by Tupac, for their first appearance in full makeup and outfit since 1979. That's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that.
March 16th, Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men. 16th consecutive week stay at number 1 with One Sweet Day ends when Celine Dion's Because You Love Me replaces them. One Sweet Day enjoyed the longest consecutive stay at number 1 in Billboard's Hot 100 history.
And that record has since been broken. But now Mariah owns the record again for the longest number 1 single of all time.
Yeah, what if the Christmas song didn't exist? What would be number 1?
I think Old Town Road.
Oh my God. Wow. I would have never guessed that.
Yeah, I think Old Town Road has the record.
Incredible. We mentioned MC Hammer. April 3rd, MC Hammer files for bankruptcy.
Knew that was coming.
Sad times. June 25th, Jay-Z releases his debut album, Reasonable Doubt. I don't think too many people cared in 1996, but if you became a fan of Jay-Z soon thereafter, you would have cared because That's a really good album.
Yeah, people cared in New York. Um, Reasonable Doubt was very much a regional hit and didn't really take off nationally.
What did you think of the follow-up?
In My Lifetime Volume 1,
Yeah.
I think there's some good stuff on it. I think there's some really, really like Jay-Z and Bad Boy was not a good match.
The
Um,
idea of a lead single, with, Babyface on it, right?
yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah,
interesting time. 1997 is just wild in
a
general.
weird year.
The Spice Girls, July 8th, released their debut single "Wannabe" in the UK. It was a global hit, hitting number 1 in 31 countries and becoming not only the biggest selling debut single by an all-female group, but also the biggest selling single by an all-female group of all time. Were you rocking with the Spice Girls back then?
I mean, so the Spice Girls were big in the UK for maybe like 6 to 9 months before they came over to the US. The US was like early '97. Um, and like, I'm not gonna lie, I mean, the Spice Girls have only released 3 albums, and I think I have owned all three. I don't really rock the Spice Girls all that much in 2026. Um, and even then, I was like, this is kind of corny. But kudos to the Spice Girls.
Yeah. Very good marketing by
Yeah,
whomever was
extremely
behind
good
them.
marketing. Yes.
August 1, MTV2 is launched. The first video is Where It's At by Beck. Even in 1996, did we need a second MTV channel?
I mean, I watched MTV. Well, I didn't have cable back then, but until maybe like 2008 or so, I regularly watched some form of televised videos, whether it was MTV or VH1 or BET or, kind of flipping between. In 1996, MTV was super huge and was starting to get into reality programming.
Mhm,
Like Real World had been around for a couple of years
mhm.
already, and maybe they just felt like they needed a second network so that they could be true to like having a station that actually played videos.
You know what I learned about the cable industry is that what if you had a giant channel, so let's use ESPN because ESPN, is still the biggest
It's
cable
still
channel
huge, yeah.
out there. So you get a carriage fee. So what they're negotiating with all the cable systems is a carriage fee. So it's like if for every cable subscriber that you get, depending, it could be based on the tier. This person could be paying $80, could be paying $100, whatever.
Sure.
ESPN gets like $10 no matter what of that number.
Damn.
So then what would happen is the company that owns ESPN, which is now Disney, they'll be like, yeah, like you got to pay us for ESPN, but guess what? You also got to pay us for all of these other channels that we own. And now you're talking nickels and dimes compared to the $5,
Sure.
but it's still like money that comes out of it. So I don't know exactly how MTV2 was built, but there were like at one point there was like 5 or 6 different MTV channels,
Mm-hmm.
MTV Soul,
MTV Jams.
MTV Jam.
Uh,
So what happens is when MTV comes back to the table, they're like, "Yeah, if you want us, you also have to take these other channels and pay us for these other channels." So like the whole key to the cable industry is launching a great channel that is getting tons of viewership, and then when it comes time to renew, you create a second channel and then just make money off of that second channel and say you have to bring this channel into your system or else we're going to pull the original channel. And like
oh wow.
that was how the cable industry worked for all those years, and now it doesn't work as well anymore because not as many
People don't
people have
have
cable.
cable. Right. Yeah.
So they're like, man, streaming screwed our business of free money here. All right,
Interesting look behind the curtain.
that's your lesson in cable television.
All right.
Okay, September 7th. This is where it gets pretty sad here, and this is going to be the focus of this episode. Rapper Tupac Shakur shot several times in a drive-by shooting while being driven from the MGM Grand Hotel along Sunset Strip in Vegas after seeing Mike Tyson versus Bruce Seldon. He dies 6 days later. Do you remember where you were when you heard that information?
I remember. So when he was shot, I didn't find out about it until I left for work the next morning and bought the newspaper. And obviously, it was on the front page of all the papers. That's where I found out that he got shot. And that would have been a Monday morning. Um, when he died, I remember I was in Times Square. I was coming home from work, and I must have had the radio um, on my Walkman or my Discman or whatever, and it was probably like on Hot 97. And they were, playing Tupac records and announcing the news. So yeah, I know where I was both when I found out he got shot and when I found out that he had passed away.
When he got shot, so I watched the Tyson and Bruce Seldon fight live.
Okay,
I mean, it wasn't a very long fight. It was a
right.
very quick fight. I'm not exactly sure if this is the same fight, but Tyson somehow comes from the stands and runs through through the entranceway as Tyson is coming back from winning. I don't know if it was that fight or the fight
Yeah, I
before.
can't remember. I mean, I've actually been reading Mike's autobiography,
Mhm.
and he talks about that. But it's been a couple of weeks since I last picked it up, so I don't remember exactly the specifics of that fight.
Yeah, so I'm listening to the radio. I think I'm taking a shower before I go to bed or something like that on Saturday night, and I had it on the sports station, and it was just a Mike Tyson beat Bruce Seldon, and then there was like a small piece of it, and and rapper Tupac Shakur was shot, and I was like, sports station, and they're kind of reporting on this Tupac thing. That's kind of big, and,
Right,
and and what it did is it validated it to me because I was like, okay, they're not gonna like have like a false report and put it on air. Like that's
right.
not what they're gonna do. So I kind of knew before I went to bed. And then, me and my buddy Edson, we went to go hoop, and as you're getting to, like, day 4 and day 5 of him being in the hospital, the future is kind of bleak, like, they're telling you, like, his mom is like, "Yeah, the he's like, his body is for whatever reason surviving, and it shouldn't be surviving." And so we go to the park and we're shooting hoop, and I'm pretty bummed out at this point because I was a big Tupac guy when I was at that age. And so all the local Bay Area stations are playing nothing but Pac, and I want to say the Machiavelli stuff is kind of already leaked. And so I just remember keeping my car on so we could keep the radio on while we were shooting hoop, and we were listening to Tupac when he eventually did pass away. So that's my
Right.
memory of that.
Right. Yeah, I guess that fight was on a Saturday, so I would have read the news on Sunday.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Now, did you realize that on this very same day, Michael Jackson kicked off the History World Tour?
I did not.
I didn't know that either. Crazy.
No.
By the way, you've heard that meme or that story that I think I've heard of Tupac being a little disrespectful to Kadada and Michael Jackson yelling at him or something, or they were fighting or something.
I've heard that story.
What is it? Where did that story come from?
I have no idea, but somebody needs to find Kadada Jones and find out if that's actually true.
Her sister was just at the Golden Globes, man. Rashida's doing great stuff.
Yes, she
Uh,
is. Rashida's fantastically talented human being.
yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Okay, October 27th. Pop-up video receives its
Ooh.
premiere on VH1. How much of a
Wow.
pop-up video guy were you?
I mean, again, I didn't have cable at the time. I from the years 1996 to 2000, maybe 2000, I did not have a TV at all. So there's a lot of stuff there that I missed out on, but pop-up video ran retroactively on VH1 for years. So I feel like I caught up.
Yeah. Slash announces in a fax statement that he's officially leaving Guns N' Roses. 1996. Were
I
you a
don't
big
think
Guns
there
N'
was a Guns N' Roses to leave at that point,
I
but
know. Were you a Guns N' Roses guy?
I mean, I enjoy some Guns N' Roses songs.
Okay, I'll say that's about 50-50.
Yeah.
November 12th, and this is the last one here, and then we'll move on. Eminem releases his debut album, Infinite, which is not
Wow.
the one that people remember
Sure.
being his first
Right. It's
album.
the underground Eminem record.
Yeah.
Pre Dre.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about some early Pac stuff because, like I had mentioned, one of the fascinating things about Jeff Pearlman's book is just trying to figure out who Tupac the young man was, who
Right.
Tupac the teenager was, and who Tupac the budding artist was. And, you know, those people are vastly different from the image that he had. And we know the story about him going to the art school in Baltimore, and Jada was one of his classmates.
Right.
Um, he was somebody who was kind of overcoming a lot of things because his mom was sick, addicted, not always there. And it was actually reading the book, I didn't realize how bad it was for his mom just on a day-to-day basis.
Hmm.
And him essentially having to kind of parent himself for the most part. He
Right.
did have a little sister too. And so, he's trying to kind of figure this whole thing out where, moms is just making bad decisions because she's an addict. And what's interesting is Dear Mama, the lead single off of Me Against the World, it's kind of a fantasy record. It's like an aspirational song about who he really wanted his mom to be for him.
Right.
And that was wild because like she's not great in the version of the song that he created, but obviously he had lots of love for her.
Lots of love for his mother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like just the idea of his childhood, the rose that grew from the concrete, all the things that we heard about, probably a little bit more bleak than people would even realize.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so
you think about it, single parent household, low income, your parents an addict, like that's just, to survive that, I think, immediately speaks volumes.
one of the things that they had mentioned or that Jeff wrote about was kind of a way for him to deal with this was self-medication, which is
Right.
why he was at least according to lots of people, seemingly either always high or always drunk. Like that was just like his normal state of mind or of being was always under the influence of something. And you kind of wonder about how much of that is related to a lot of the pain that he had to deal with, the emotional pain of his childhood.
I mean, I would imagine his PTSD was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the start of his career, I think most Tupac or most music fans would know this, is Digital Underground and
Right.
and just being able to uh, be a part of something. And Shock G had an untimely passing not too
Right.
long ago. And Money B is still, he's still out there and he's still doing interviews. You can find some Money B stuff out there. But that group, like Tupac, again, the legend of Tupac was that he was like this piece of this group, and he's really not even. He's the roadie who they're letting on stage
To
because
dance.
he's willing to do some things that other artists wouldn't be willing to do at that time. Like he's got to
Right.
like hump like blow up dolls and stuff on stage. He's got to carry the rec. He's got to carry a lot of the stuff, and so even when he does get on the Digital Underground song that people remember, same song, he's barely a part of it, but the legend says that, "Oh, man, this was like a three-man group, and Tupac was one of the people." He's not.
No.
He's just this is just kind of like his entry into the game, though Money B, and I think Shock G as well, though it's kind of harder to figure out Shock G. He seemed to be a little bit more of a private person, but those guys did see him as kind of like their little brother in that sense of like, oh man, like little brother's growing up. He kind of figured out how to do the music thing. Cause I don't think they really believed he was going to. Like he didn't seem like a serious rapper or a serious like hip hop artist to them. Cause he's got this transient personality, right? Like he's dealing with never staying in one place for too long.
Right.
He's got ties to Marin County in the Bay Area. I think he would claim Oakland in some ways. I'm not sure he actually lived in Oakland. If he did, it was for like a short time. He also grew up in Baltimore. He also lived in New York. So
He
he's
was
this
born in New York.
yeah, he's this guy who's just been kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think people just assume this man was born and raised somewhere on the West Coast
In
and was
California. And he
it
lived
was
in California for like less than for a quarter of his life.
yeah, yeah. So all right, so
And
we
shout
talked.
out to all the rappers who were roadies and then became popular. So Craig Mack, Redman, Tupac. I'm sure there are a couple others.
See, but Redman makes some sense to me though, because that dude is funny. I'm sure he was entertaining as all hell
I'm sure he was
as a
too.
roadie.
Yeah.
Craig, I don't know. I wouldn't know what to think about Craig Mack, but you know, but I'm sure a lot of Pac's personality, probably a little closer to Redman's personality than people would think, because he did have those entertainment, those artistic skills. The idea of being an actor was just as much a thing for him as being a rapper.
Well, I think
Um,
he was an actor kind of before he was a rapper.
yeah, but I think there was clear interest in both things
Sure.
as a young person, but they didn't have rap school when he was like,
Yeah, rap school.
13 years old or whatever. Um, yeah, so Tupacalypse Now is his first album. Brenda's Got a Baby is not the first single. I think
Trapped, I think,
Trapped
was the first
or
single.
If My
Yeah.
Homie Called, one of those two. But Brenda's Got a Baby is the one that kind of sticks out to everybody because of the song, the what the song is about, and that is a true story. So much so that Jeff Pearlman will talk about it in our episode that comes out later. My interview with him, my man found not only Brenda, but he found her baby,
The Baby. That's pretty awesome.
and
I do have to read that book.
he talked to both of them. He got a chance to
Nice.
talk to both of them, which I mean, it's the intro to the book, and I'm just like, oh my god, like to kick off a book with
That's
that
pretty
story
crazy.
is insane. And Pac, I think they said, I think Omar Epps has actually said this, that Pac was reading the newspaper and started writing stuff down based off of the story that he read about the baby, and the Brenda's baby. Like, he read the story in the newspaper and just started writing lyrics. Like Omar Epps has said that in interviews,
Nice.
which is kind of crazy. So Tupacalypse Now, Strictly comes out. Like you said, there's a little bit more crossover there because I Get Around is
And
a
that
hit.
album built, yeah, because the first single I believe from that album was If My Homie Calls. No, or like oh, what the hell is the name of that song? Sorry, I gotta Google. You can cut this typing out.
No, we're keeping the typing in, man.
Uh,
This is real work.
uh,
This is effort being put in to this.
I Get Around was the second single from that album.
Okay.
The first single was Holler If You Hear Me.
Okay.
Yeah,
I love Holla If You Hear Me, by the way, because that is a version of the type of song that we were talking about before, that he kind of built his career off of
right,
before the 180 switch.
right.
So Strictly comes out, and keep your head up also kind of keeps him in the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, it built up again, like you know, Holler If You Hear Me was the first single, and that kind of was like a low buzz, at least here in New York. Then I Get Around was really the song that broke Tupac in New York. Um, was just like a big radio hit.
It's
Uh,
kind of a Digital Underground song.
right, it's a Digital Underground song. Summertime vibe, and it was less serious than the stuff that he had put out up until that point. And then Keep Your Head Up came out, and that like blew everything wide open.
How do you feel about Keep Your Head Up here now? Gosh, it's almost what 32
32
years
years, 33
later.
years, something like that. I mean, it's still a great song.
The
Um,
problem that I had with that song is, and it's not a real problem because he writes it before some of the things happen with the rape case and everything. But
right,
Like, there's a version of Tupac that's about, F the bitches and the hoes, and there's another version of Tupac which is like pay respect to your moms because if without moms there's no us. And like that dichotomy of both guys existing in a Jekyll and Hyde way always fascinated me, and I always wanted him to lean closer to the keep your head up version of who he was, but that's just not, A, may not have been what he thought was going to sell, and B, may not have been what he thought about life at that time.
I mean, I think there's a few things at play here. One is that like misogynist Tupac didn't really show up until All Eyez on Me.
Yes.
And again, I think that was just part of him being like, I got to play this gangster role now. I'm signed to this label. Whether some of it was like coerced, um, I think up until that point, even I Get Around, which is kind of like, yeah, I'm a player. I love you again, but it's respectful.
Yeah.
It's not,
He's pinching butts in the video and
yeah,
stuff and pulling
it's
tops
not,
off, but in like in
it's
a
not
nice
like a
way.
super misogynist record. Um, so I think that I Get Around and Keep Your Head Up can exist from the same person. Like you can be down for the cause. You can be conscious as hell and still like to fuck. You can and again, like you're a young guy. He's 22, 23 when this record comes out. Like
Mhm.
you don't really understand where that may be seen as hypocritical in some ways at that age. I don't think.
Yeah, I do wonder though, post he proclaimed his freedom while in jail, like most people do when they
Right.
are, very similar to Mike Tyson.
Right.
And, Jeff Pearlman doesn't really litigate that in his book. He basically writes that it's a he said, she said.
The rape case?
Yes.
I mean, obviously nobody other than the people that were there
But
know what
supposedly there
happened.
was a lot of people there, which is part of the problem.
Right.
A lot of the homies were there, and, so that kind of, muddies the water about what the real story is,
Right.
and I guess I do wonder, he's mad at the system 100% coming out of jail. Is he mad at women as the plurality of that word? Is he angry at women because of what he believes he was not guilty of and being caught up?
I think that's possible.
But
Like if you get sent up the river for a crime that you feel like you didn't commit, and I mean the jury is still on whether he did actually commit a crime, you're going to be angry at whatever system caused you to lose your freedom. I mean, I think even people who are 100% guilty as hell are still mad at the system.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's an interview. Actually, I'm trying to now we're going back like, to like 1995 here, 1994, 95. There's a Vibe magazine actually
Kevin
had
Powell.
fantastic coverage of
Yep.
Pac at this time. Kevin Powell from original one of the original Real
Original
World
Real World
people.
cast members. Shout out Kevin Powell.
That dude,
He's
man.
still doing his thing.
Did you ever see any of the Real World Homecoming? They put
I
all of
probably
those
did.
folks back in the same house. Like, this was probably, like, I don't know, 5 years ago.
Right.
He he did not let some of that stuff go from back then, and I understand why. And, I he kinda I almost it almost felt like he was portrayed a little bit as, like, the angry guy, but I also, like, sympathized with him so much, 'cause, he's a journalist and he was working hard to prove that, he could do this thing. It was a fascinating look back, but, everyone's just like 30 years older, so
Right.
it's not the same vibe of like these young
Right.
kids who are kind of growing into adulthood. But anyway, so in that interview or in those series of interviews, what Tupac had always claimed was a lady came to the house, he was kinda messed up, so he went to take a nap, and then everything happened while he wasn't there. That was but he never said who was there. He never said it was the homie did this, homie, but that's what he had always claimed was that even in this idea of this woman being abused, that he was not there to witness it or to even be a part of it. And I think her side was that he was there and he kind of tapped in the homies without her consent. That
Right.
was what she had always stated.
Right.
So what that it's so hard to even think about it all these years later. I've not heard much from her after it happened. I hope she's doing well. Um, but we know the Tupac side of those things. So that is a big part. He and then also even before that, or actually no. When is the Quad Studio shooting?
It's after he got convicted like 2 days after he got shot.
Okay, so this is kind of what kicks off the Big E versus Tupac thing. So he's in New York at Quad Studios. He's going to record, and I think he sees like Lil C's, who he's homies, or he thinks Lil C's is like a cool kid. He knows that he's one of Biggie's guys. Tupac and Biggie were friendly at this point,
They were friends. I mean, not even like friendly. They were like homeboys.
and Pac would say that he always tried to look out for Biggie, and he talked about, hey, for every song you do for the fellas, do a song for the ladies too. So yeah, so they had a relationship. Um, I I would love, and it's so unfortunate because we never got to see either of these guys grow to be old dudes, because the stories, about what they were dealing with and being these two young guys who were kind of on top of the world in a way that I'm sure neither guy really wanted or predicted, and then they become the center of this controversy. And if you're Biggie's side, like, you're almost like, why am I even involved in this
Right.
thing? So he becomes a target because of this fictional, I can't even call it a fictional war because there was real beef, but him versus Tupac was not a real beef. And it's just like that whole thing is fascinating. Just the fact that we don't have those men alive to tell the story of what was going down or why things happened the way that they did. It sucks because there's just so much stuff happening there.
Well, it
But
also gave people an excuse to like create their own version of the story, whether they were there or not. The people that are remaining are going to make the story up to make them look as good as possible.
yeah,
So you're never really gonna know the real deal of what happened, what led to it, you know, all of that stuff. And it's at the end of the day, it's sad because we lost two talented young men in the prime of their lives. Ultimately, yeah, and that was kind of the catalyst of it.
so then he's at the studio. He has a gun on him. He is very, what would you say? He's not of right mind. I think he's very
I mean,
paranoid
he was
about what's
paranoid.
going on.
Yeah, he was paranoid. He's like about to go in for sentencing. He's trying to basically like stack up as many features as he possibly can to like a make some money because he was broke, and then just kind of like keep his name out in the streets. So he was supposed to be doing this verse for like Little Sean or something like that, and that's what led him to Quad Studios. But yeah,
And
he
this
was
is a verse that is gonna be kind of like a throwaway thing. He's only
right,
doing it to get some quick money.
right, and he's strapped because I would imagine again, like you're super paranoid. You're dealing with this trial. You're about to get sentenced. Like, you know, you're walking into a situation you don't know everybody that's there. Like, you want to protect yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So, there is, I guess some dudes with some masks on are like, "Dude, you gotta
Run your
stand
shit.
down. We're about to rob
Yeah.
you." And he fires, but I think we're pretty understanding that he actually fired accidentally
Right.
because he shoots himself
Yes.
with this
Yeah.
gun in his waistband, which then sets off the other side. and he does get shot and is presumably left for dead until until they find him and then they rush him to the hospital.
Right. Right.
So, did we ever figure out who the quad studio shooters were?
I believe that is still unsolved.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yep.
So, in his paranoia, and look, if you're shot a bunch of times by some masked dudes and like you're doubling and tripling your paranoia, he puts the blame on Biggie and Puffy because this is their city. They should know what's going down. It feels like a sneak attack to him. The problem with this theory is that what is the reason? Like, what would
Right.
Biggie and Pac, or what would Biggie and Puffy need to set him up for? So
Right.
that's always the part of his story that just never made sense. But again, like
Exactly. Right.
he's just paranoid all to hell, looking behind him at every stop. And yeah, so he is in the hospital in really bad shape, and because he's got the trial that you were talking about, he checks himself out of the hospital and he finds a spot to basically be secluded.
I
And I
believe he was staying with Jasmine Guy.
and I think they had like hired some bodyguards, like
Yeah, probably like the fruit of Islam, you
yeah.
know, to take care of him, act
And
as security.
and so I don't remember the time frame in which he is convicted and until he goes to jail.
I mean, the shooting I believe was in November of '94. He got convicted like days later, and I think he went to jail in like January of '95.
That's
So
a
it all
very
happened like
fast turnaround.
very quickly.
So while he's in jail, if you go back and read those Vibe magazine pieces, it sounds like he's like, because he's not able to smoke weed all day long, he's a pretty sound-minded. Like,
Right.
he's creating some theories about why these things have happened. And like I said, the Biggie and Puffy setting him up thing never really made sense. But he's also like trying to figure out who he is. He's trying to figure out the system. He's trying to figure out what his career is going to be like. And as you're reading these things, you're like, okay, like when he gets out of this thing, it sounds like he's trying to change his life.
Right.
But then Suge Knight and Team Interscope put the bail up. And because of him getting out and because of what the idea was, okay, you now owe us 3 albums, and Suge Knight's entire label is built off of the identity of gangster rap.
Right.
And so now Pac falls into this image, and all of those things that he was saying in jail, he kind of just throws them out the window. And it's just, okay, clean slate. I got to make money. I'm running out of time, and we're just going to go through this 2-week period of recording as many songs as humanly possible because he's got to put this record out like as fast as he can.
Right.
And reading his process, which was to have like 3 different studios like all set up, and he's going to go to one, rap his verse, jump to the next studio, rap his verse, jump to the next studio, rap his verse. And there's video out there of him saying, we're not working fast enough. We're not working hard enough. We don't have the time. Like, we need to do this stuff now. We need to be more proficient.
Right.
Now, there's a quality versus quantity aspect. I think that shows on All Eyes on Me,
Very much so.
because there is a 10 to 12 track album that would have 0 skips, but that's not what you get. You
Nah.
get a 25 track album or whatever it is, and especially on side B, I almost never go back to the second
I mean,
album.
my All Eyes on Me experience is like I mentioned towards the top. I was out of work, limited funds, and All Eyes on Me and The Score by Fugees came out on the same day. And I knew I wanted to buy both of those albums, but I didn't have enough money to buy both those albums. So the album that I initially went with was All Eyez on Me. And I think it was the only album I bought in the entire 2 months that I was unemployed. So back in those days, I listened to music a lot more actively and would listen to an album from top to bottom multiple times. And very quickly, I was like, man, this album is bloated. There's like, there's a good album's worth uh, of music in these two albums.
Mhm.
And there are probably half a dozen songs on that album that I literally have not listened to since 1996.
I went through the entire thing,
Good for you.
and I was like, "Wait, this song is on this album? How come I don't remember it at all?" And
Right,
it's because I just would a lot of times I would never get to the second album.
right.
There are some songs that from the second album that I still remember, but yeah, like there's a lot of I remember when Pac passed, you remember MTV, there was an Asian VJ, young man with a really, really deep voice. I forget what this dude's name was. I want to say it was like
Really?
Theo or something.
Oh yes, yes, yes. DJ Theo. He was he was like a Quiet Storm DJ.
So he had this really deep voice,
Yeah. Had a little like
and
Barry White thing happening.
and he would talk about Pac, and he would go like kind of within and almost like the room would darken as he started talking, and so everyone was doing their
A
like
lingerie would come out.
everyone was doing their memories of their Tupac stories or their Biggie stories or whatever at this time. And I don't remember if it was actually Theo doing the interview, but there was somebody interviewing someone in rap music, and the guy said, it's like, what's your favorite album right now? And the guy was like, All Eyes on Me. And he's like, and not the first album, but the second album. And I
Second.
was like, okay, I'm turning this off because there's no
Wow.
way in hell somebody likes that second album more than the first album. No way. That's like some made up stuff.
Everybody's got their own individual taste. I don't get it, but I mean, it's not impossible.
Ugh, I was so mad when he said that. Okay, so the whole like what was your impression of who Suge was as like I feel like when it was Dre and Snoop, Suge was way more behind the scenes, but then when
Initially, he
Pac
was
got there, he was way out in front.
like the real moment, I think, where Suge Knight went from just like label owner to like personality was the Source Awards in
Mhm,
'95
mhm.
when he was like, if you don't, when he dissed Puffy and was basically like, if you don't want your executive producer dancing in your videos, being like, "Oh, come to death row," and that's when I think it became public knowledge that he was kind of this, you know, character.
He's
Uh,
recruiting Tupac at that same award.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then right after that, there was the stuff where like he basically poached Mary J and Jodeci for a while. It was just, yeah, and you're like, okay, this is maybe not a great guy. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
for the initial part of it, like the Chronic and Doggy Style, it was, Dre and Suge, and then Suge's legend just kind of grew.
And around this time, Dre's trying to figure out his exit strategy.
Right.
I don't know if those conversations between Dre and Tupac necessarily happened, but you had to just thinking of the timing, like Dre had to have figured out that he was on his way out by the time
It,
Tupac gets there.
it must. I mean, it happened so quickly. I mean, California Love comes out in like January. The album comes out in February. Dre was gone by like the summer.
Yeah.
And Tupac was dead by September.
Yeah.
So it's like all of this happens like inside of a year.
And Dre, I know that some of Dre's the delay in him actually leaving was because Suge wasn't gonna let him go. Like Dre basically had to give up everything to get out of his contract to start Aftermath. Like I remember reading Now we're going back to the hip hop magazines again. I'm trying to remember. I don't think it was The Source. I don't think it was XXL. It was one of the other hip hop magazines, but they had written a story about how hard it was for Dre to get out of death row,
Right.
and like just being threatened, and Suge was going to beat him up, and basically Suge was like, "Yeah, you can get out, but you're basically giving me everything."
Everything. Yeah.
And then Dre was just like, "All right, if that's what I got to do, that's what I got to do." So yeah, that whole time period is just wild. Like to think
And
about
weird that it happened in such a short window.
the fact that Pac is on the Grammys in February and is dead in September.
September. Yeah.
Nuts.
Yeah.
So All Eyes on Me is being recorded. California Love, like you mentioned, is the first single. I heard this song the first time I was driving down Capitol Expressway. I want to say I was listening to, it's not KMEL, which is the probably the more famous hip hop historical Bay Area radio station. Tupac mentions KMEL on To Live and Die in LA, I think he mentions the station. I want to say it was Wild 107. A DJ comes on and he's like, he basically says, "I have a bootleg copy of the new Tupac song." It was the roughest, least produced, least mastered version of a song that you ever heard. Almost to the point of I was like, "What the hell is this? I can't even really understand what this song is." But that's how hot the streets were for whatever was gonna be Tupac's first song.
Sure.
And this song is actually a song that Dre had wanted for himself, but again, in this idea of Suge, like, we gotta put all of our effort into the one album that we're needing to come out. Dre has to give up California Love, and the California Love song that we know, the radio version, that's not even on the album. The album version is a remix
Remix.
version
So
of
what's funny is the first version that I heard of California Love was the remix.
okay.
Um, it was, again, listening to Hot 97 and they had, like the Battle of the Beats or whatever. Uh, and it must have been, I think I was still working. So it must have been like either late December 95, early January 96. And they played the remix of the song, which they didn't say was a remix at the time. Um, and I was like, yo, this is kind of dope. Like, I prefer the remix to the original versions to this day. Um, but yeah, so that's the first version I've heard. I don't think I heard the original version until I saw the video.
And that video, I think, is Tupac's like coming out party as something that could be bigger than what people previously thought he was. I mean, Dre. I don't know if Dre necessarily had that same charisma, but the Chronic was a giant success. But Tupac, as a in that video, the Mad Max style video, you're seeing this dude on screen, and you're going like, okay, he's about to jump off. Like he's
Right,
going to be bigger than we even realized that he could be.
right.
And again, less than a year later, he's gone. So which is wild. So California Love comes out as the single. The album goes bonkers, and I think it is currently at just under what do you think? It's just under 6 million, but because it's a double album, it's counted twice.
Right.
So it's diamond, but that is the so yeah, probably right under 6 million sold or so. The
Yeah, I mean, yes, albums, double albums, for those who don't know, are counted twice by the RIAA. So if a double album is certified 12 million, that means it sold 6 million. And I'm gonna go behind the curtain for a minute, and I can tell you exactly, according to SoundScan, how many copies All Eyes on Me has sold. If I can figure out what I'm doing here. Uh, to date, It has actually sold nearly 10 million copies. Actually, no. Um, yeah, if you throw streaming into the mix, it is at 9.8 million.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, so the streaming just added
Yeah.
like 3 million copies or
But
something.
in terms of pure sales, like CD and album sales, uh, it has sold about 4.5 million copies.
So, when you think about the songs on that album, now you're not on the West Coast. Obviously, there's a different fandom out here for that style of music
Right,
than what you, being a New Yorker, was used to when it came to hip hop.
right.
Though, it doesn't mean that you can't fuck with it. I'm sure you liked The Chronic and Doggy Style
Yeah,
for those
I mean,
reasons.
I loved the Chronic and Doggy Style.
So, when it comes to the singles or just, the songs as you remember them, what was your favorite song on that album?
I mean, I would say then and now, California Love is my favorite song on the album. I liked How Do You Want It? I liked I Ain't Mad at You. I liked What's Your Phone Number? Um, I liked Got My Mind Made Up. So All About You. Pretty much everything on the first album I thought was pretty okay. Life Goes On, I thought was a good song. And then, like as I said earlier, like going through the tracks on that second album, I'm like, I barely remember any of these.
Shorty Wanna Be a Thug is a good song.
Okay,
You're like, "Okay, I'll take your word
I'm
for
gonna
it."
take your word for it. Yeah,
"Heaven Ain't Too Hard to Find" is a good song. It's a little bit more R&B
right.
than it is a hip hop song, I think. More like All About You than the other songs.
And shout out to Quincy Jones again. His son QD3 produced "Heaven Ain't Hard to Find."
Oh, there you go. Alright, so I will say the songs that really connected. Now, we haven't even talked about Hit 'Em Up. Hit 'Em Up is not on All Eyes on Me.
It is not
It was a B-side of the How Do You Want It single,
right.
and I remember hearing this song. Did it come out after he had already passed away, or was it out there before he
It
had
was out
died?
there before he passed away. The "How Do You Want It" single came out that summer.
Okay,
And it was on the maxi single. It was "How Do You Want It," "California Love," and "Hit 'Em Up."
okay. So, because my memory is my friend buying the single, because I didn't have the single yet, and her saying, "Have you heard this song?" And she put it on, and I was like, "What in the blue hell is going on here?"
Right,
Like, this is crazy. Like, it's not even, we have had hip hop battles historically in the past. Like, uh on the cover of one of Kumodi's albums, isn't like LL's hat is like ran over by a
under the
car or
wheels of a
something?
car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, there's been tons of frustration between artists in the past, but I don't remember hearing the venom that came out of Pac's mouth on that album. Like, I wonder what, like, had they ever said what specifically pissed him off on that day to record that album?
who the hell knows?
It's
I
probably
mean,
something Puffy did. Puffy probably
eh,
said something.
right,
He would be the one to
right,
getting under people's skin. But I mean, like, I can't imagine whatever happened even being like that bad compared to what he did in
right.
that song.
Yeah, I mean, "Hit 'Em Up," and I know plenty of people like that song. I can't listen to that song anymore just because obviously, if you have any kind of conscience, knowing what happened after he put that song out is just like, you know, obviously not exclusively due to that song, but as a reflection of that song, at least two people lost their lives.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just like, I'm a big believer in, you are what you consume, and like that level of negativity and anger and all that stuff, man, it doesn't sit well with me at all. I didn't like the song then. I don't like it now.
It has kind of become iconic in a way. There is a current Instagram meme where, uh, people who like to kind of do some pretty fun stuff with songs. Like there's this one that I saw where there's a woman portraying herself as a backup singer in the studio on the night that Pac recorded that song, and she's like kind of vibing, and then they'll play some of the lyrics, and she's like, "Oh," like just it's kind of taken on a second life, and maybe it's because we are so far away from what had happened. People can kind of now have fun with it again. I don't know. It's still kind of eerie to me. Like I
Yeah,
don't think I've ever had the best time with that song. Uh,
yeah, I think that's just a reflection on like the type of person you are. Like if you can listen to that song and not feel a certain way, like I sort of just question what kind of person you are. Um and another bad thing about it is that it just kind of set the stage for every hip hop beef that followed, where then you have a bunch of people drooling on the sidelines wondering if somebody's going to get shot.
yeah.
Um or gives people license to say the most absolutely foul stuff, on a record. And like, I don't know, man. I just like I can't get behind that.
So we're gonna save our top five Tupac stuff, and we'll kind of rank the albums in our top five episode that will come out after this one. So I'll save kind of where we sit with certain songs, but I wanted to do the Grammys redux here. It's
Okay.
like my favorite part of this show at this point. Okay, so Tupac was not nominated for very many Grammys. He had a short career.
Yes.
Hip hop in of itself had a short career at the Grammys at this point in time.
Right.
So Tupac is nominated for Best Rap Album in 1996 for Me Against the World. He faced Naughty by Nature for Poverty's Paradise, Bone Thug for 1999 Eternal, Old Dirty for Return to the 36 Chambers, and Skilo for I Wish.
Oof.
Out of those
Lord have mercy.
five, do you remember who won?
Naughty One. It was the
Naughty
first
one.
ever best rap album Grammy Award.
No way.
Yeah.
What was best rap song the
It
first
was
one?
just best rap performance.
Okay, okay.
And then in '95 they added a bunch of categories.
Yeah, so Naughty by Nature won. Out of all of those albums, as far as what has kind of withstood the test of time, I think Me Against the World holds up well. I was never the biggest Naughty fan, so I don't really know their discography very well. But that Bone Thug album holds up from the perspective of um for their fandom. Like they still have a giant
A
fan
huge
base.
fan base. Absolutely.
It's crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that is a shout out to them for still being able to do that in now so many years later. All right, so for the same year, best rap solo performance. I think this one was actually pretty easy, by the way. Coolio, "Gangsta's Paradise" was the winner. I mean,
Because
for
that song was everywhere.
how big he was, like
Right.
at that time, that movie, everything that makes a
Yeah.
whole lot of sense
That
to
was just
me.
a gigantic record.
Also, in the nominees, Tupac for "Dear Mama," which was fantastic. Biggie for "Big Papa." Dr. Dre for "Keep Their Heads Ringing." And Skilo coming back going like, "Hey guys, remember me?"
Remember?
I mean, because okay, so Coolio wins just because it was the biggest song, but you had Pac, Dre, and Biggie all in the same category.
Category.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
And three good songs too. I mean, my vote might have been for Pac in both of those categories. Um, Me Against the World is definitely the strongest album of those five. Um, the only one of those five that I would even listen to a little bit today. Um, but as far as the songs go, I mean, Big Papa's a great song. Keep Their Heads Ringing is a great song. Um, yeah, any of those three. But Dear Mama has like an emotional resonance.
And then the 97 Grammys for All Eyes on Me, Pac has already passed away at this point.
Hmm.
He's going head up against the Fugees for the score. We talked about this in our Lauryn Hill episode. The Fugees win Album of the Year in 97.
Also, R.I.P. John Forte.
R.I.P. John Forte. We talked
Yeah,
about John Forte in that episode as well.
yeah.
Also, Beats, Rhymes, and Life, Gangster's Paradise, and Mr. Smith are up there. I think the correct album won for
Yes.
97. And then for
Yes.
rap performance by duo or group, this one is tougher. Tupac is nominated twice in this
Mm,
category, loses out to the Fugees again for Killing Me Softly. So California Love and How Do You Want It were nominated. So was Salt and Pepper, Champagne, and
okay.
Bone Thug for First of the Month. I don't remember Champagne, I don't
I
think.
remember Champ. It was from a soundtrack.
Okay.
Um, Killing Me Softly won Best Rap Performance.
Best rap performance by duo or group for a song in which Lauryn Hill just sings.
Right, that song doesn't have any rapping in it.
One time.
What did what were they thinking?
I don't know. They're just
Um,
grouping everything, I guess,
Everything
because it
together.
was on a rap album, I guess.
I mean, I okay. That's weird. Um, uh, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Because I had to look that up. Wikipedia is telling me different.
Okay. Now you may have better information than me.
Here. According to Wikipedia, we're looking at rap performance by a duo or a group, right?
For 97, yes.
Seven. Yeah. So Tupac was nominated twice for California Love and for How Do You Want It. Champagne was nominated once again by a Tribe Called Quest. And the
Oh,
winner
okay.
ended up being Crossroads.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
That makes more sense. Crossroads is a fine winner as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, okay, so then Tupac would be nominated again a couple of different times for posthumous stuff, but outside of Changes and the Machiavelli album, what else is there for like post death Tupac stuff that you would even remember?
Remember? It's so hard because they put out so much of it so fast and all of it kind of blends together. Wasn't there like a Pac album that Eminem produced or something like that?
There's a song with Pac and Biggie on it
Okay.
called I think it's called
Running.
Runnin'.
Yeah, I know that song. I know.
Uh Eminem has some stuff on one of those albums as well. Um there was the Are You Still Down, which is actually the same title of the song that he did with John B.
John B.
And
Right.
like that's a legitimate song. Like that thing wasn't scrapped together. Like those guys knew each other.
They were, yeah, and that John B record came out like a week after Tupac died.
Yeah.
Oh no, maybe not. Came out like a year after Tupac
Oh,
died,
okay.
September 1997.
Okay, so he was sitting on that for a little
Yeah.
while. But yeah, like change. I remember that "Are You Still Down" album came out because that was the first one, and I was excited. And then I heard it, and I was like, "Eh, it's not. There's not much." Like Changes came out on a Greatest Hits album,
Right.
and Changes is a really good song.
Changes is a really good song.
But if you listen to "I Wonder If Heaven Got a Ghetto" and Changes, they are very similar. I almost feel like Tupac recorded sort of the same verses and put them together slightly differently to create the different songs. Like
That is entirely possible.
almost to the point of where he was like, "Okay, I wonder if Heaven Got a Ghetto is not good. Like it's not how I want it, so I'm doing this way."
Right.
Um, but then there's a Still I Rise with the Outlaws. If you had access to all of the bootlegs, like there's songs where he's like dissing Lauryn Hill and he's dissing the Fugees and he's dissing like all these people, and they were done with the original production. But then when they came out years and years later, they had different production on them for
Right.
whatever reason. So that I mean that there's still stuff like I heard an interview with Sean Stockman and Edie Amin, and he's like, "Yeah, we still got one song out there that we're trying to that for the 30 essentially for the 30th year after his
Anniversary of his
passing."
passing.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's what they're saving up for. But then Edie Amin was talking about having grandkids, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're so old."
Yeah, man.
All right. So just we'll quickly go over the sales. You had mentioned Apocalypse Now, still not platinum after all these years. Strictly went platinum. Me Against the World went two X or 3X. And then All Eyes on Me Machiavelli, which what was the release date for Machiavelli?
I mean, not long after he passed,
I feel like they just rushed the shit out of that thing to get it out.
it came out. Let's see, he passed away the 13th of September, right?
Yes, I think so.
Um, the Machiavelli album came out November 5th, 1996, so about 6 weeks after he passed away.
And I can't imagine that that was the original idea, was to put
I think
that
it
thing out.
was.
Was it that
Yeah,
year to get to? So was that from him, or was that like the Suge Knight marketing too? Because why would
he
Suge
was.
want him to be out of contract so quickly?
There's a whole conspiracy theory about all of that stuff. But if I remember correctly, Tupac was actually talking about the Machiavelli album when he was alive.
Yes,
And,
I do remember that.
yeah. And, it was definitely always going to come out before the end of the year.
He makes reference to himself as Machiavelli on All Eyes on Me.
Right.
Um, Recorded between July and August of '96. Um, Interesting. Yeah, I don't know why I assumed, and maybe it's just because I don't know, that album felt super like it felt like there were songs on there that maybe it needed a little bit more time for people to kind of pick through it. But I just assumed that, you don't ever really put two albums out in the same year, especially
Same year.
when the other album was still, it was still out there and still popular.
Right.
So just very, very, very interesting. Okay. So as far as the posthumous stuff, are you still down? Sold a ton because it was, out the next year. The greatest hits came out in '98, and that
Right.
sold a ton. And then he had Still I Rise with the Outlaws in '99, Until the End of Time, 2001, Better Days, 2004, Loyal to the Game, or Better Days, 2002, Loyal to the Game, 2004. Wasn't there a song with Elton John on one of
Yeah.
these?
That's on one of those Eminem. That was the Eminem produced record.
Ghetto Gospel,
Yes.
Elton John. Keep getting them checks, Elton. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I feel a lot better about talking about this because, we are now two grown adults talking about someone who's been gone for so long, and someone who meant a lot to me growing up, living out in this area. But I think the thing I got out of that book the most is it made him human to me again, because there's a space where he passes away, and then it's the legend of Tupac versus this was an actual human being
Right.
who was on this earth and just being a normal dude, or being a kid, being a teenager. So that book, and then doing this with you, of course, I like the idea of Tupac the human versus Tupac, this mythological thing that's out there, that a lot of people gravitate to. So
I agree, and I think it's just important to understand like the humanity of people, and why they may choose to do some of the things that they do. And again, like I haven't read the book yet, but from what I understand, like Tupac came up a certain way, and a big thing for him was acceptance. And he wanted to be accepted by his people, his homeboys, his friends, whatever. And I think a lot of the roles that he played, not in movies, but like over the course of his adult life, were ways of getting accepted, like as part of the hip hop community, as part of like the crew that he was running with at any given time, whether it was like the thugs in New York that he was hanging out with when he was making Juice, whether it was the gangsters in California that he was hanging out with after he signed to Death Row, whatever it was. Like he was a chameleon, but I think that he was trying to like be all of these different people just as a way of gaining acceptance. And unfortunately, I think that, you know, didn't work out the way that, it would have been great for it to work out. Um, but, I really do think that that's kind of where he was trying to go. He was just trying to find a home.
now we have this section of kind of like unanswerable questions, or just things I throw out there for us to think about.
Right.
in our current political landscape, and even the first Trump presidency, I kind of wondered, and I don't know why I thought about this, but I always like wondered, like, okay, if Tupac didn't pass away, is he an outspoken person in this time frame? Is he somebody who is looked at as a thought leader, as a 50-year-old man, 55-year-old man? Um, like we have Chuck D. Chuck D is outspoken, but he's not out there, ringing the alarm bells about certain things.
I
Chuck D
mean,
is also a
and
lot
even if he
older than
was
Tupac.
right, even if he was, nobody, the amount of people that are listening is relatively small. I mean, Tupac had.
There's an influence that Pac had. I
Hmm.
don't know if that influence would still exist today or not, but because Chuck may have had that in like the late '80s, but hip hop is so much smaller back then.
Right. And hip hop also turns quickly. But, I had this discussion with my friend Kevin last night. We're talking about what would have happened if Biggie had lived.
Hmm.
Um, and, you know, also if Pac had lived, you have to reset everything that's happened in the last 30 years for hip hop.
Hmm.
Dre's career is different, Suge's career is different, Biggie's career is different, Puff's career is different, Jay's career is different. Like, if Pac lives, all of this stuff changes. And
Hmm.
there is very much Snoop's career is different. There's very much the possibility that, particularly because it seemed like Pac was about to make a pivot away from kind of the gangster stuff after his Death Row contract ended, that he would have gone back to doing, sort of pro black political, music. And he would have, like, he wouldn't just be standing up against this regime. He would have been standing up to Bush. He would have been, everything that's happened in the last 30 years. I think he would have put a stamp on it. And he was so charismatic and also so much of like a multidisciplinary artist. Like, even if the hip hop records had stopped selling, he would have ended up actually, and this is what we discussed last night, Tupac might have been Will Smith.
Hmm. There were roles before he passed away that he took that were kind of questionable, but may have been more about, I need to make a quick buck and I need to kind of get my foot back in the door here because my reputation in Hollywood is probably because of what I was, what I was in jail for. It may be a little harder for him to get back in to that whole fraternity or whatever. So I do wonder about that.
Right.
Gridlocked was actually a really good performance. I don't know if
Well,
you've seen Gridlocked.
I've not seen it.
Yeah, he's just like a dude who's strung out on heroin. Um, that's an interesting. It's an interesting thing. I do wonder. There was a bigness to Will Smith because of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Prince. Actually, we had changed that. We said Tupac would not have been Will Smith. He would have been Ice Cube.
He could have been Ice Cube.
Yeah.
Which is funny because they were going for the same role in Higher Learning, right?
Right.
Um, the Ice Cube of today, though, is not who I think Tupac would have been on the political spectrum.
Right. No, you're absolutely right about that. Um, just in terms of like career, I mean,
Yeah,
Tupac, I think, would have had a fairly long and successful film career.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I wonder like how he grew up, his mother's influence on him, the Black Panthers just in general, that mindset.
Right. I think he would have been a thought leader, and maybe some of that is wishful thinking, but I do think that he would have grown, he would have matured into someone who, younger generations respected for his views.
Yeah, I would hope so too. But that goes back to the idea of who he was versus who we wanted him to be or who we hoped that he would be.
Right.
That one is probably closer to some of these other things that people think about him. So I've always leaned towards that. I've always had that in the back of my mind too. Of this is where he may have kind of turned to in his career, in his
Right.
adulthood, which we never got to see. So
See, that's right.
all right, that is going to be it for here. We'll have our top 5 episode out soon on Pac's career and also the interview with Jeff Pearlman, which I really enjoyed. So thanks to
Nice.
everybody for checking out 50 for 50. We have a little there's a community tab on the YouTube page that I will start posting a little bit more to, just to see if people interact that way. But Gigi at bspnmedia.com, or if you can find me elsewhere and you are interested in being part of the Discord, I'm trying to get more music discussion going in the sports Discord that I have, and centered around what Mike and I are talking about. So if you're interested in doing that, you hit me up and we'll get you in there. And yeah, so come find us 50for50.net, where you can find everything, like on YouTube, and subscribe, and also subscribe to the podcast feeds. So for Mike, I'm Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.
Later.